There's a version of you that is gone, not lost. Not hiding somewhere waiting to return, gone, and deep down you feel it. You try to go back to old habits, old friends, old patterns, old comfort, but something inside you resists. Something has shifted, something has woken up. And here's the truth that most people are never told: you can't go back to who you used to be. Not because you failed, not because the old you was bad, but because you chose to grow. And growth is a one-way door. Once you walk through it, there is no handle on the other side. You've been feeling it for a while now, this tension, this strange discomfort that lives in your chest. You're sitting in the same room with the same people, having the same conversations, and something inside you is screaming, this isn't it. This isn't enough. I need more than this. But you look around and everyone else seems fine. Everyone else seems content. So you start to wonder, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just be satisfied? Why does everything feel too small? Nothing is wrong with you. Absolutely nothing. What's happening is far bigger than a bad mood, far bigger than a phase. You are shedding a version of yourself you've outgrown, like a snake shedding its skin. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for a convenient time. It just happens, because growth doesn't wait for you to feel ready. And that process, that painful, disorienting, confusing process, looks a lot like falling apart before you realize it's actually coming together. You used to laugh easily at things that now feel shallow. You used to chase approval from people whose opinions no longer hold weight. You used to settle for conversations that never went deep. You used to shrink yourself, make yourself smaller, quieter, less, just to fit into spaces that were always too small for you. And then one day, quietly, without announcement, you stopped. You stopped pretending, you stopped performing, you stopped apologizing for the fire building inside you. And now you don't fully belong in the old world anymore, but you haven't completely arrived in the new one either. You are standing in the gap, that in-between space, where the old version of you is behind you, and the new version hasn't fully shown up yet. And that gap can feel like the loneliest place on earth. Here is what nobody teaches you about transformation. It doesn't feel glorious when it's happening. It doesn't look inspiring from the inside. It doesn't come with applause. It doesn't come with celebration. It doesn't come with a crowd cheering your name. It comes in silence. It comes at 2 in the morning when you can't sleep because your mind is outpacing your current life. It comes when you're sitting in a room full of people and feeling completely alone. It comes when you're eating alone because the conversations around you no longer feed you. It comes in moments of quiet, uncomfortable clarity, when you realize the life you're living is smaller than the life you're capable of. Transformation is not a highlight reel. It's a renovation, and renovations are messy. They're disruptive. They tear down walls before they build new ones. They leave everything looking worse before it looks better. And the people walking past the construction site, they only see the mess. They don't see the blueprint, but you do. You carry that blueprint inside you, that vision of who you're becoming, that quiet knowing that this discomfort is not destruction, it is construction. Most people, when they feel this kind of discomfort, they run back to familiar, back to comfortable, back to the life that felt safe even when it was slowly suffocating them. Because familiar feels like home, even when that home is a cage. Even when that home was built for a version of you that no longer exists. The old version of you had its purpose. It got you here. It carried you through seasons that required who you were then. But seasons change. Winter doesn't stay forever. Neither should you. Think about who you were 5 years ago. The beliefs you held onto like they were facts. The fears that kept you in your lane. The ceiling you placed above your own head without even realizing it. The things you thought were impossible that you've already done. The people you were afraid to disappoint who you've already learned to live without. Would you go back to that version? Would you trade everything you've learned, everything you've endured, everything you've become to go back to that smallness? Of course not. So why are you trying to hold on to the version of you from last year, from last month, from last week? Every version of you that has served its purpose must be released, not mourned, not clung to, released, with gratitude. And with the courage to keep moving. Here is the shift that changes everything. Stop seeing your evolution as a betrayal. You are not abandoning your roots. You are not turning your back on where you came from. You are not being ungrateful for the people and places that shaped you. You are honoring the most sacred responsibility you were ever given, the responsibility to become who you are truly capable of being. Most people spend their entire lives managing other people's comfort at the expense of their own growth. They stay in relationships they've long outgrown because leaving feels unkind. They stay in jobs that suffocate them because a predictable paycheck feels safer than an uncertain dream. They stay silent when they should speak. They stay still when they should move. They stay small because the people around them are comfortable with their smallness. And so they shrink, year after year, slowly, quietly. And somewhere deep inside, that knowing never goes away, that voice. That persistent, relentless, impossible to silence voice that says there is more. You are more. Stop playing small. You've heard it. You hear it every morning before the noise of the day drowns it out. You hear it at night when everything gets quiet and honest. That voice is not your ego. That voice is your potential. And it does not stop speaking until you start listening. Champions are not built in applause. Champions are built in the moments when everyone else has gone home and they are still there. Still working, still grinding, still becoming. In the gym at 5 and when no one is watching. At the desk at midnight when no one is impressed. In the quiet moments of discipline that never make it to anyone's feed. Discipline is not what you do when people are watching. Discipline is what you do when no one is. That is where character is built. That is where the gap between who you are and who you're becoming slowly closes. You want to change your life? Stop waiting for the right moment. The right moment is not coming. Stop waiting for the right mood. Motivation is a guest. It visits sometimes. Discipline lives with you permanently. Stop waiting for permission from people who have never dared to demand more from themselves. The version of you that you are becoming does not need their approval. It needs your commitment. Your daily, unglamorous, unwitnessed commitment. Every morning you wake up, you have a choice. You can reach for the old version of yourself, the comfortable one, the one that fit where everyone expected you to stay, the one that required nothing and risked nothing. Or you can take one more step toward who you are becoming, one more decision made with intention, one more hour invested instead of wasted, one more boundary held when it would have been easier to fold, one more standard raised when no one would have noticed if you'd lowered it. These are not dramatic moments. Nobody applauds them. Nobody sees them, but they are everything. They are the bricks. And you are building something. You are not becoming someone new. You are becoming someone real. The person you were, they were the rough draft, necessary, valuable, but not the final version. And the greatest disservice you could do to your own story is to stop writing before you reach the best part. So let me ask you directly. No soft questions, no comfortable framing. Are you going to keep apologizing for who you're becoming? Are you going to keep making yourself smaller because the people around you are uncomfortable with your growth? Are you going to keep walking back into habits and spaces and conversations that were designed for a version of you that no longer exists? Or are you going to make the decision, the real one, not the one you talk about, not the one you post about, not the one you plan for Monday, the one you live right now, today? Because here is what I need you to truly understand: going back is no longer an option. Not because the door is locked, but because you have seen what's on the other side. You have tasted what clarity feels like. You have felt what it's like to operate at a higher level. You have glimpsed the version of yourself that is possible. And once you've seen it, truly seen it, comfort becomes a prison. Settling becomes suffocation. The old version of you with its doubts and its fears and its well-practiced excuses, it can no longer hold you. Not because you're perfect now. Not because the road gets easier from here. It doesn't. In many ways, it gets harder. Because the higher you climb, the more is required of you. The more clarity you gain, the less tolerance you have for anything that pulls you back down. But something in you has permanently changed. Something in you chose. And every day you wake up and choose again, that choice compounds. That choice becomes habit. That habit becomes character. That character becomes the life you actually live. You are not the person you were, and that is not a loss. That is the most powerful thing about you. Some people in your life will not understand this. They will call it arrogance. They will say you've changed and mean it as an insult. They will say you think you're better than everyone now. They will say you've forgotten where you came from. Let them say it, because you know the truth. You haven't forgotten where you came from. You've just decided it's not where you're staying. You honor your past. You are grateful for what it built in you. But gratitude doesn't mean going back. Gratitude means using everything you were given to become everything you were meant to be. Let them be confused by your growth. Let them be uncomfortable with your standards. Their comfort is not your responsibility. Your becoming is. Here is where I leave you, not with a 5-step plan, not with a list of habits. With a truth, one that doesn't need decoration. You are standing at the edge of who you used to be. Behind you, familiarity, comfort, the version of yourself that was easy to explain. Ahead of you, the unknown, the work, the silence of building something that doesn't exist yet, and you don't have to see the whole path. Nobody who ever built something real could see the whole path at the beginning. You just have to take the next step, the next honest decision, the next early morning. The next hour of work nobody will see or acknowledge. Because that work, that quiet, unwitnessed, unsexy work, that is where the real you is being formed. Not in the moments you perform for others, in the moments you show up for yourself. When no one is watching, when no one is keeping score, when no one even knows you're still trying, you keep going, not for them, for the version of you that exists on the other side of your consistency. For the life being built brick by brick, in the silent hours the world never sees. You can't go back to who you used to be, but you wouldn't want to, because who you are becoming is worth every hard moment. Every silent night, every step taken when nobody clapped. That person, that version of you still being built is everything. If this video reached something in you, don't let that feeling disappear by tomorrow. Subscribe to Motiverse. This is a channel built for people who are done playing small. People doing the work in silence. Every week, content designed to keep you moving when the world gives you every reason to stop. Share this with one person who needs to hear it today, and drop a comment below. Tell me, what version of yourself are you finally ready to leave behind? I read every single one. Now go. The next version of you is waiting.